let's go, let's go.
3 years ago, in that wild year of 2020, Six Flags Over Texas announced their newest attraction, Aquaman Powerwave. And with delay after delay, the attraction finally opened in March. And while it's great to see something new come to Over Texas after waiting such a long time, you still can't help but wonder if the attraction was truly worth it. So in today's video, we're going to discuss exactly that, and talk about the pros as well as cons for Aquaman Powerwave. Before I get into the video though, I would like to say, if you're new here, welcome to the channel for all those thrill seekers. All JV Thrills will make all sorts of content related to theme parks and thrill rides, no matter where they're located. So if you're interested, you should definitely stick around. And thanks to those who have already shown lots of support by subscribing. Anyways, let's get into today's video. So before we get into the pros and cons of this attraction, we also need to talk about the context, because it's highly important to determine if 3 years was worth the wait. So as I was saying earlier, the attraction was announced in 2020, and it took 3 years. This happened due to multiple reasons, the very first delay being 2020, and all of you remember what happened then. The second delay happened due to Six Flags realizing that maybe not having a turntable for this attraction was not the best idea, so they went to work installing a turntable for Aquaman Powerwave, and this will come into context for the review later. And now for the third delay, this one was mainly Six Flags' fault. Due to a switch up in leadership and delays in construction, the attraction took longer than expected, with it still missing some elements, which I'll also talk about in a bit. So now that we know the context, let's first talk about the pros for this new attraction. I mean, after all, we're not going to slander this ride. It's still a great ride. So why don't we start with the actual ride experience itself? Because let me tell you, the POVs and videos on the internet do not give this ride justice. People love to compare this ride to Mr. Freeze and say it's way lower level because it solely goes back and forward with nothing interesting besides the splash. But let's get something straight, this is not Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze's prime focus is intensity and a shock factor, but Aquaman's purpose is to make you feel the speed, feel a build-up, and of course, get hit with that splash. So don't go in expecting a Mr. Freeze. Go in expecting a new ride experience you've never done before. Because after all, it's the first in America. So the ride experience to me, out of 10, is an 8. It's not all the way up there, but it does have amazing moments. For one, we have the second launch, which you actually feel. The speed is intense, and yes, you do get airtime the second time around. That's one of the great things about the hump of the attraction, and it's something Mr. Freeze cannot offer. And as for my favorite moment of the attraction, it's definitely the last launch at its highest speed, where you reach the highest peak of the attraction. That's when it feels very surreal, and you're seeing the entire park right before the splash. So with that, let's talk about another pro, which is the dispatches. Typically, when a new attraction opens up, the very first thing you have to worry about is long waits. It's a new attraction, and for Aquaman specifically, it's so close to the front that I was genuinely worried for its dispatch times. Pandemonium and Justice League are one of the busiest attractions in the park due to its location and of course popularity with families. And with Aquaman not being too intense, allowing it to be for families, of course the line would be very long. But surprisingly, the turntable actually did its job. I kid you not, the queue goes by so fast if both trains are running, thanks to the turntable. Boarding is fast, and because a lot of people can fit on the attraction, it helps even better. Another thing that actually speeds up the process is the loose articles bin. For Aquaman, if you have a loose article, they make you put your stuff in a cart prior to you boarding the attraction. And once you're already boarded, an employee will push that cart over to the opposite side, so when the ride finishes, your stuff is already waiting for you at the exit, making the dispatch time even faster. Now while it is a great idea, they definitely could have gone the easier route with adding lockers similar to Dr. Diabolical's cliffhanger. Regardless though, it's really efficient and it allows dispatch to go by extremely fast. So if the line for Aquaman looks long, trust me, it's not that long. The max I've waited so far for this attraction is 20 minutes, and that's when the queue is at the sign. So my overall score for dispatch is definitely a 9. Not a full 10 because it's not crazy fast, and it's not always consistent, and I'll explain why in a bit. But now, let's talk about the cons of this attraction, and how they can improve on it. As I was saying before, Aquaman Powerwave is a great addition for Over Texas, and it was desperately needed. And while yes, it's not the major coaster we needed, it's the perfect replacement for the original Aquaman Splashdown. Instead of replacing it with a dry coaster, we now have a modern version of the original, but with an added thrill factor compared to just dropping and getting wet, which allows for different experiences between all three water attractions in Over Texas, which I absolutely love. With that said, this coaster isn't perfect by any means. One specific con is technical issues. And while yes, it's very typical for new attractions, especially prototypes, to have lots of issues, Six Flags tends to not react well with stuff like this. For example, last year, Over Texas debuted their new Pirate Spelunker Cave attraction. And when it opened, it didn't seem like Six Flags level. I mean, the effects and everything was insane. But in just 2 weeks, all the animatronics started malfunctioning, none of the effects were working, and it seemed like a Six Flags attraction yet again. Then of course the flooding happened, and now the ride is standing but not operating once again. So what am I trying to say? Well, if Aquaman's having lots of issues, I really hope Six Flags strives to fix it, and not just gives up on it. So far they're doing good, but only time will tell, and let's hope they don't do the second route. Now something I do want to mention is the ride's theming. Typically for reviews, we only talk about the attraction, but for me personally, every aspect matters, including theming. I mean, you can't tell me theming doesn't make the attraction more fun, because stuff like Dr. Diabolical's ride soundtrack or pre-show is super immersive and engaging, and you would say it's more fun than just waiting in Titan's queue. And in terms of Aquaman's theming, it's not all that. There's of course the typical posters of the hero, but the queue is essentially just a giant cage, and you're sitting there looking at the cage until you get to the station. The only actual theming that I do want to give props to is the sign. At night it has this cool light up effect, and it looks like torches are attached to it with real flames. Now that's theming, but it's not cohesive with the rest of the queue line. So to me, it looks like the rest of the attraction is not finished. They just wanted to get Aquaman open to not get it more delayed, but had to sacrifice all the stuff that was supposed to happen in the queue. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, let's flash back to 2021. In 2021, Ron McKenzie announced that Aquaman Powerwave would undergo treatment to get the turntable, but this would cause another delay. But to make up for this delay, he was going to make a really immersive queue for Aquaman that was indoor with AC to tell the story of the King of Atlantis. Then we have leadership changes, and then another delay from Aquaman. It finally opens, and what do we get? Just a singular statue with a little backdrop, with a really cool sign. But clearly, there was more that was going to happen. And to me, it's so obvious. The way the queue is built looks like framework for something they were planning to finish. But they never did because they were just rushing to open the attraction. And to me, it's a little bit disappointing. I mean, Pulsar, Wallaby Belgium, the sister attraction of Aquaman, has some theming. And Aquaman would have had the same thing, but due to rushing the attraction, and maybe budget issues, it never came to fruition. But here's what I'm thinking. It's not too late to add theming to Aquaman. Hear me out. To me, the attraction looks very unfinished, but they can definitely add on to it. And the question is how and when. Well, as for when, it's easy. When the attraction is down for winter, or when the park's closed for the season, basically any moment that gives them time to work on Aquaman, and not close it to the public. Then they can actually install the theming that was supposed to be planned. It can be indoor, have AC, and have immersive experiences. Or they can even go the Wonder Woman route. Wonder Woman at Fiesta Texas has this giant temple, and while it's an outdoor queue, it looks really cool and fits the attraction. So maybe Aquaman can have a temple, like in the concept art, or like Journey to Atlantis. Essentially anything to make the attraction fit well. Because to me, it's very odd that we have all that Aquaman theming in the sign, and the statue and stuff, but as you go in, it doesn't match. So we have to make it cohesive, and Six Flags has that opportunity. Also, Future JB Thrills here, they just installed the locker system that I was talking about in the beginning of the video for Aquaman. Meaning, even now, they're still adding stuff to the attraction. So they're more than capable of adding more theming. So as for my theming score, I give it a 2. Those 2 points solely come from the sign and the statue. Everything else is very bland, and I really hope Six Flags adds more. So with that, those are the pros and cons of Aquaman Powerwave. So what's my final summary? Well, like I said, the attraction is amazing. It's really fun, I enjoy the airtime and the weightlessness feeling, as well as the splash at the end not being too crazy. I mean, you get wet, but not to the point that you'll be soaked all day, which is great. We also really needed this attraction, because otherwise it would have been lacking another water ride, and that's a big no-no, especially for a park in Texas. so I'm glad to have the attraction. But like I said, there's also some downsides. I really want to see more theming for the attraction, and I really wish we could have seen its full potential. But judging on the small updates is already coming to Aquaman, it looks like we'll start to see its full potential soon. Regardless, it's really great to see Six Flags make big additions like this and give it to parks like over Texas that need it. Hopefully other parks get the same, and hopefully to make up for these 3 years of waiting, Over Texas gets that major coaster that we've been waiting for a long time. But what do you think? Was Aquaman Powerwave the right addition for Over Texas? And was it worth the 3-year wait? Comment down below. And if you enjoyed today's video and want to see more like it, be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell to know when new videos drop on my channel. Anyways, thank you for watching. This is JB Thrills signing out.